Qualys has brought together vulnerability management and patch management, letting security teams discover vulnerabilities and apply patches immediately, all within a single, unified app. Sign up for a free trial of Qualys VMDR, vulnerability management, detection, and response today at securityweekly.com/Qualys. Keeping up with security issues across thousands of web assets without the right approach to web application security is a daunting task. Get ahead with web vulnerability scanning automation from NetSparker, a leader in dynamic and interactive application security testing, known for its ease of use and accurate results. Detect a wide range of vulnerabilities in all legacy and modern web applications, address security bugs at scale by automating the confirmation process, automatically prioritize vulnerabilities, and assign actionable tickets to the right developers in their native workflows for rapid remediation. For more information on how to scale application security with ease, visit securityweekly.com/NetSparker. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. InfoSec World 2021 is proud to announce its keynote lineup for this year's event. Hear from Robert Herjavec, plus heads of security at the NFL, TikTok, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Stanford University, and more. Security Weekly listeners save 20% off your digital pass. It is a all virtual event, November 9th through the 10th. Visit securityweekly.com/ISW 2021. Also, very, very important announcement, as we were just talking about in between the shows. We have a lineup, several lineup changes and some changing of time. So, as many of you, of course, know, Josh Morpett now is a regular host here. Adrian Sanabria is now the primary host for Enterprise Security Weekly. And the next round of changes is some scheduling stuff. So starting the week of October 25th, we will be live streaming Paul's Security Weekly on Wednesday nights from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. This is a huge, I mean, for a live stream, I mean, for people listening to the podcast and watching the videos, like, it doesn't impact you at all. For us hosts, it's huge. I mean, Larry and I have been doing this show. I mean, Larry was episode 1 and forward. Yep. And so, but in the beginning, it wasn't, I don't know how many episodes went by until we fell into the regular Thursday night rotation. It was a little bit of time.
We found that in order to do it often enough, we actually had to have that
regular time.
That regularly scheduled time. Exactly.
And so, for, I mean, the better part of 15 years, it's been on Thursday nights.
Yep.
And we kind of decided that Wednesday nights would be better because so much other stuff, for whatever reason, is on Thursday nights. And so we're like, look, let's move to Wednesday night. So this show will now be on Wednesday night starting next week. We are moving Enterprise Security Weekly to Thursday afternoons from 3 to 4:30 p.m. I think it's a great schedule change. It's going to take some adjusting for. I mean, a lot of Larry and I have the most time in of going Thursdays just when I do. Oh wait, now it's Wednesdays. So
yep,
it'll be an adjustment, but I'm looking forward to it.
Well, shoot, I've been doing this for 6 or 7 years now. It'll be an adjustment for me too.
And I'm old. For everybody, collectively, we decided Wednesdays are better. Mr. Joff Thayer is here with us. Joff, welcome.
Hello. It is good that you get to see me.
Yes,
I am glad to be here.
Yes, Joff, you missed you missed my Python segment. I sent you my code.
I was hoping sorry I missed your Python.
It's easy to miss, but I was hoping you'd review my code and tell me everything that I did wrong and things I could improve upon. So,
you know what? I did give it a quick read over, and I was like, "Oh my God, what the hell?" No, that's not true. I gave it a quick read over. I was like, "Hey, I think Paul's been listening to me."
Oh, good.
This is not bad.
Yeah. Any suggestions? I'm certainly open.
Nice.
Thank you.
Hey, Joff, real quick, is that a hairdryer on the credenza to your right? Because it looks like a hairdryer. Yeah, that.
It is not. It's a massager.
Oh yeah, those things are great. I tell you what, like,
these things are awesome. It vibrates. There we go.
Yes,
look at that.
Josh.
Look at it go.
Make it go.
Huh.
No, it's not for that, Josh. I tried. It hurts.
No, it's for,
only the first time, though.
Only the first time. Then you learn, no, it really is for your other muscular regions.
Yeah, I've been working out once a day for the entire year, and I couldn't get through it without my friend here.
Yeah.
Nice. I was going to say, because if that was a hairdryer, I mean, dude, you missed the point. Right?
Yeah, there's no hair. Hey, can I make a shameless plug?
Yeah.
Can I do that?
Are you doing regex again, or are you doing C2? Which one are you doing, or both?
No, I'm doing the regex again. I just want to throw that out there for next week. It's October the 26th, which is what? Is it Monday, Tuesday? I don't know. Tuesday.
26th would be Thursday. If 25th,
is it? Oh,
if
okay,
25th is the Wednesday.
Yeah.
29. How come I said?
Wait, I'm confused now.
26.
26th is the Tuesday. Wednesday is the 27th.
Calendars are hard.
My birthday is on Wednesday.
Wait. There's this cool app, for those who didn't know, called Cal on Unix.
Oh, God.
And if you do
There's a
Cal
calendar
10
on paper.
2021, oh, Cal not found. Oh my God, Callie, I have no respect anymore. No respect at all. Oh God, that's awful. Anyway, let me try that again on a real Unix system. The 26. Oh, and it says it's not there. You want to install it now? By God, it should be the default. Oh my God, what has happened to the world?
Get off my lawn.
No, you're right. Yeah, sorry. I thought
Wednesday.
the announcement said October 25th was the first time. I think it said, it said the week of October 25th.
You said the week.
Yeah, the week of October 25th.
It's a Tuesday. It's a Tuesday.
Tuesday, October 26th. Josh is teaching regex. October 27th will be that night when we're doing Paul Security Weekly for the first time on Wednesday nights.
It's happening next week.
Yes, next week is we're making the schedule change, and the 28th is when ESW will move to the afternoon. So, Joff, you're teaching regex again, and where
Have
can
fun
people
next week, Paul. We're all going to show up on Thursday and say,
I know, right?
Crap,
It's going to be some adjusting.
That is totally going to happen. Look, on the regex thing, look, it's 4 hours virtual. I think it's a really fun time. I put it together because I wanted to have a security essentials, security fundamentals, and it really comes down to IT fundamentals, frankly, class that people could really get behind and enjoy. We cover multiple different command line tools. We cover multiple different Cal? Languages.
Because when I typed Cal on my Ubuntu system, it gave me the calendar.
Same on my Mac.
Yeah. Guys, endless ribbing. It is.
If Joff can do a shameless plug, can I do one too?
Let's go. Shameless plugs for everyone.
Yeah.
So
wait, hold on. Joff never told us how to register for his class.
Oh yeah, this is true.
So I have a URL that's still there. It's a shortened bit.ly/Joff Life. That's what it is. And you can register there. It's a $25 minimum payment all the way up to $125. It's like pay what you can and arrange. Like if you're in a company and stuff and they'll expense it for you, well, try to be nice. But if you're by yourself, you can't afford much, then $25, right?
Student,
not too bad.
Yep, college student, any of those. Yeah. Cool.
There it is.
Jeff, you have a shameless plug.
Shameless plug. When is this happening? I got asked to participate in a virtual conference being held by, sponsored by Checkpoint. Remember Checkpoint? They used to do firewalls. Now they're a software company. It's interesting. Wednesday, November 10th, they're doing a virtual secure cloud summit, and they invited me to speak as a subject matter expert for some reason. So I'm going to talk about the fundamentals of cybersecurity applied to cloud. I get a whole whopping 15 minutes to do it.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right, my turn.
I will post the URL in the Discord for everyone. How's that?
Thank you, Jeff. Josh.
Oh, yeah.
Shameless plug.
So, shameless plug. B-Sides Delaware is happening again, virtual, November 12th and 13th. So that's a few weeks away. We've got about 20 talks in the hopper right now. We've got several sponsors. Secure, Gigamon, and which is great people. And Huntress is looking at signing up. So we've got some great sponsors. We've got some great talks. We're going to have a lot of fun. Hopefully, let this be the last virtual year.
I agree.
And we'll see. So bsidesdelaware.com. I'll drop the link in the Discord, but bsidesdelaware, spell it out, .com, and you're there.
Sweet. On to the news stories for this week. Where shall we begin?
Well, that's a good question.
That's a good question, isn't it?
Yeah. Let's consider this.
Fielder's choice.
Microsoft launches a security program for non-profits, which, I mean, I think it's a great thing. However, in reading this announcement, it states that nonprofits will have access to free security assessments to help them understand the flaws in their endpoints, identity access, infrastructure, network, and data. The goal is to help them create a remediation plan to protect their environments. I think what these types of initiatives, because we talked about Biden's legislation that was passed into law, Biden signed it into law, right? That the CISA will help, I think it was colleges and universities, and the language was very similar. Like, the help is, we're going to tell you everything that's wrong, but we're not going to help you fix it.
Yeah,
And,
I was going to say,
and that's really where I'm at. I've seen, this is the kind of second announcement that I've seen. Don't get me wrong, it's a good thing, but I feel like they don't necessarily need that. Like, you could do the assessment with just like a couple of questions, like, how are you protecting your identities? Do you have MFA? Do you have some kind of, password thing? And if you don't, like, all right, let's help you with that first, right? I think there needs to be help.
The CIS best practices, right? You could send out, the sort of baseline 5-6 questions, right, and get a pretty good sense of where you're at.
Yeah, like, if you're not doing these things,
wake up a lot of awareness.
Yeah, like, if you're not doing these things, please, like, go here for some help. Like, there should be, and I guess in my opinion, there should be organizations set up to help organizations actually implement these things. I think about municipalities, state, local governments, nonprofits, colleges and universities. I might put in a separate kind of camp. But I think there are a lot of not-for-profit organizations that just don't have the resources to implement the proper controls or the base fundamental controls. And that's what they need help with. They could probably use some help understanding, like, where their gaps are. Sure, maybe as they mature a little more, but I think they should have a place to go to, like, get help. And I think the help they need is with people and resources, hands-on keyboards, actually helping these organizations implement some security controls. Yes,
but I mentioned in the first segment I'm doing work with a Canadian municipality right now. They are certainly, they're not a nonprofit, but they certainly don't have huge unlimited resources and budgets, and they're constrained by having to report to, the people to whom they serve, type of thing. I hear what you're saying, Paul, and I don't disagree with it, but I think what my current customer is struggling with is they made a significant decision in how to approach their security program based on what a vendor told them, and I come along and I'm like, yeah, the vendor's kind of blowing smoke up your ass.
Yeah, I've run into that too, Jeff. Yeah.
So, and not that Microsoft's not a vendor, but I'd like to think that this is, we know what they need to do. They don't necessarily know what they need to do.
That's a fair point.
And if Microsoft can have a program where it's a little bit objective, a little bit, because these types of assessments cost money too for most companies. If they can help them along and at least help them, I hope that part of the program is prioritization. What's the low hanging fruit? What do you do first? What's the biggest bang for the buck? Whatever aphorism you want to use.
Yeah. I hate the analogy of, like, you have to know you have a problem before you can fix it, kind of thing, because I don't want to make light of substance abuse, right? But I hate the analogy, but I'm going to use it anyway, that, like, you have to really believe that you have a problem and face that and understand that before you can move to fixing it. And I like your suggestion, Jeff, in that spin this as a positive thing, that if Microsoft and CISA can help organizations, like, be aware of and understand, like you have these problems. Okay, then fixing it is the next thing. And I guess I'm putting the cart before the horse to say, like, just go in and fix the things. But the organizations you're encountering in your example, Jeff, are like, well, we don't have a problem. Like, what are you talking about? We didn't fix anything. And that's a fair point.
Well,
I think what you tend to see, though, just to make a comment, because I used to be in university system here in North Carolina, and what I saw on the lower end, when you talk about the community colleges, for example, is they tended to pool their resources because they had to, right? They didn't have a choice. They don't have the spend for individual security analysts or individual security positions at all. But they can pool their resources, get together, and have like a handful of statewide people or region-wide people. I
was one of those people, Joff. It's great. It's a great point.
I was kind of one of those people too, in two different roles. But yeah,
that's why I said I think colleges and universities, to your point, are maybe it's a model that others follow. Right? There's a lot of great consortiums and organizations that go, hey, like we're not just going to help one college like pool the resources. We're going to create a resource to help all of the colleges. And I think also to Jeff's point, you got to start with helping those organizations understand that they do have problems, and then offer resources to fix them is probably the right approach.
If a lot of these places, if they can just get to a baseline configuration, that puts them miles ahead of where they're starting from. And we all know that's one of the fundamentals, right? And then beyond that, I think you'll find that a lot of these really, really small shops that are in the nonprofit space are probably doing stuff in the cloud anyway, just for lack of being able to do anything else. It may be costing them more, but that's another area where they could probably pool their resources.
Yeah, agreed.
You know what, Paul? Maybe we should do as a webinar sometime, or the next time you've got a tech segment slot to fill. Maybe us as a brain trust get together and talk about, and hopefully by the end we agree on. And I hate listicles, but 3 or 5 or 6 things that you can do that will get you way, way down the road on being vulnerable to some of the major compromises and breaches that tend to happen.
Being not vulnerable.
It's funny, Jeff. Though my story number 9 is many organizations lack basic cyber hygiene despite high confidence in their cyber defenses. And my question was exactly what you're proposing. What is basic cyber hygiene? I mean, we can define it in some compliance and government regulatory standards, sure. But like, what is it? I like the 3 to 5 things.
Well, and my
that's easy.
This ties in. My second shameless plug is next week on Security and Compliance Weekly. We're interviewing the chief evangelist for the Center for Internet Security, Tony Sager, who I happen to used to work with many years ago at a certain 3-letter agency. Actually, we're talking to Tony and his son Thomas. In fact, we're going to spend most of our time talking to Thomas, hopefully. But Tony's been at CIS for a while, and I've had multiple conversations with him. And one of the questions I asked was, why the CIS top 20? Because everything that's in the CIS top 20 is in PCI data security standard. Why not? Why doesn't everybody just follow PCI DSS? And his comment was simply because it's too complicated. We had to boil it down to a top 20. I'm like, oh. So maybe we take the top 20 and boil it down to the top 5, and still so many organizations would benefit. But they got to have somebody telling them that's sort of got no skin in the game, that's objective, not the vendor that's selling them something.
Sure.
Including cloud providers, for that matter.
Josh, I feel like you were trying to pipe in. Yeah.
So I mean, honestly, the top 3 or 5, and by the way, I just stuck the it's over there. Sorry, never can tell. I stuck the URL because it's sometimes hard to spell, so I'll take that off now. And I don't want to be rude. There we go. But the top 3 to 5 things for defensive pieces are actually pretty straightforward. It's not a big deal. It's not like we'll argue over them. The 3 or 4 or 5 of us that talk about this, we never argue over this. You all know it's patch management and config management and asset management, and you're in pretty good shape.
Well, I think
that's right.
Don't start the conversation now.
But I think you left out, Josh, in that list is, I want to say user management, but I want to say identity management. You have to somehow manage your authentication and access methods.
Okay,
first
so
start.
but I wanted to make a point there, and the point was that there's a lot of different factors to this, and trying to get it down to 3 or 5 is going to be a very difficult piece. And I applaud the effort, and I think I'm going to be there, and I'm absolutely going to work with you, but I don't think it's going to be incredibly possible to do. And I think 20 is even pushing it.
I have faith. I mean, all it takes doing is coming up. Even if we have a list of 50, we can prioritize, and we can hopefully agree on what's the most important thing to do, biggest bang for your buck. You know, we used to have a T-shirt that said something about, you know, the reason we drink is because you don't change your default password.
We still have that shirt. I mean, it's in my closet.
Yeah, I still have the shirt.
Yeah, I mean, passwords and identity management.
We would disagree. I don't think we would disagree greatly on what the base levels ought to be. To be honest, right? I mean, if you know your assets, you know you have a standard configuration of your workstations, and you have a really nice, strong security, identity, access management kind of policy, you're way ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just those things alone, right? And we can sit down. And the CIS guidelines actually are pretty good because they are the basics that they put out there. Yep. That first 5 or 6 are pretty much along those lines.
One of the things that was interesting about this article, though, that I really liked, that I don't think we talk about enough in this context, is they state that detecting stolen credentials and resetting them before criminals can use them to infiltrate corporate networks is the most direct path to fighting ransomware, they say. That's the part I maybe, you know, being ransomware specific, I think can go down a rabbit hole that maybe isn't the most productive. But I thought that was interesting when we talk about identity management.
Agreed.
Down,
right? Look, I've had, in fact, literally had a conversation today. I've had major multinationals that I've worked with that password policy was the number one thing that they had to deal with in terms of defense against significant intrusion, which ultimately leads to ransomware, right? And if you win that battle from, well, the 8-character password policy is good enough for me, and you actually push it out to 15, 16, and you actually win that, you're going to, credentials is everything. You're going to put yourself way ahead.
But I also think that I like increasing the password policy, you know, based on length. And I think many of us will probably agree that expiring passwords and forcing users to change them is not the right approach. I think
NIST recently changed that. They believe, did, right? They used to have that 90-day.
Recently, like
cycle,
2 years
right?
ago now.
Yeah,
it was COVID before when they made that.
I think resetting it, if you can detect that it's been cracked or in a data breach somewhere, absolutely you should do that on a case-by-case basis and do that on an ongoing basis. I think that's a really, really sound advice.
I mean, I think 180 days is not an unreasonable policy, even longer, as long as you have the backup of a very strong policy behind that. One of the other things we see a lot is, for God's sake, don't use your organization name in the password, right? That's another thing that happens a tremendous amount. If I have a organization, I will password spray organization name 123, and I will get traction. If their policy is weak enough to support that kind of password, I mean, I'll get a lot of traction.
Did I mention I'm working for a municipality right now? They had to get me a login to their portal for information document sharing. The initial password that they gave me was the name of the city, 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other one I've seen really dumb ones.
Before we got started.
Yeah. I've seen people that just haven't been able to enforce a nice random choice from their help desk or their service desk. And then there is this common password that spreads out there that doesn't get changed.
Yeah.
And it's the same one.
Yeah. I was just talking about that with, in the context of the script I just put out there to detect that on, devices and services, but also detecting that on your user accounts is good hygiene, in my opinion. My story number. Go ahead. Sorry, Jeff.
Yeah, one final thought on that. And then I wanted to suggest a segue.
I was going to segue to story number 6 because I think MFA was a logical.
Yeah. Well, that was the same place I was going to
Yes, it is.
My question is what's the best way to convince users to use unique passwords for their organization and not reuse the same password on multiple platforms type of thing?
Is a password vault the answer?
Yeah, that's what I would say. That was my immediate go-to. I was like, go to password vaulting.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought up password vaults.
Yeah, I mean, because there's
MFA.
Yeah, all right. Let's talk MFA first. So, I mean, Roger Grimes, I think, wrote a good article, and I first was kind of reading it like, why is the majority of our MFA so phishable? And then when I was reading the article, I'm like, MFA is that, to me, that is not the solution to prevent phishing attacks. To me, MFA prevents password brute forcing and credential stuffing. That's what it prevents. It doesn't prevent the phishing attacks because, as Roger put in his article, I mean, part of the phishing attack is they're gonna get your password and they're gonna get your MFA as well as part of the phishing attack, and that technology certainly exists today. Joff, Larry, I'm sure you guys use that on pen tests, right? I've heard Tyler talk about similar methods that we're using today in pen tests to accomplish that goal. So I think just putting it in Roger did a great job putting it in the right context, right? MFA is not a phishing prevention. That's more for your password spraying and credential stuffing attack prevention.
Yeah, I'd agree with that assessment, and I think when you look at phishing, more and more in more sophisticated organizations that we're up against, we will use some sort of credential capture based attack because dropping malware on a system is becoming actually a lot more difficult than it used to be.
Interesting.
And I'm talking about the world where people can afford sophisticated EDRs and actually configure them well.
Correct.
I'm not talking about the sort of mom and pop shops or the mid range enterprises. And so credentials become a big deal there because we're gonna do that reverse proxy kind of attack. But if we do that and we capture not only the primary credential, but the second factor, we've only got a limited time window.
Yeah.
So MFA is still very valuable.
Interesting. Good point.
So to tie it all together a little bit, the idea of stronger password authentication, identity management, MFAs, you mentioned password vaults. So I was doing a little research the other day, and I came to this realization. And I put it out on Twitter, and if Dimitri's still out there not eating his dinner, he weighed in on it. I think Adrian weighed in on it a little bit, but I am classically trained in terms of two-factor authentication, where the mantra is it's something you have, something you know, or something you are. And it occurred to me that if you're using a password manager or a password vault, so you're looking up an extremely long secure password, that's not something you know. That's something you have. And if you're adding that to some sort of token that you're getting from a multi-factor authentication solution, regardless of how you're getting it, that's also something that you have. So most people wouldn't blink twice about using a password vault as part of an MFA for authentication, but it technically doesn't meet the classical definition of what constitutes two-factor authentication. Mind blown on my part.
But if the private key only exists on your workstation, I mean, you're right. I mean, technically, it is something you have.
It's technically something you have.
It is technically something you have, not something you have.
So, I mean, I think the mitigation for that, and I think that's a reasonable thing to say, the mitigation to that is a second factor to access the vault. And that's actually an important piece of this. Personally, I'm a fan. My God, where's English? I'm a fan of a YubiKey or something like that for that second factor to access the vault.
It still is. Is it still technically two things you have? It's still two things. If I have my private key, but I need my MFA to unlock my private key, it's still two things I have, not something I know.
No, a lot of people were commenting that they have a password to get into their vault, and that's something that they know. So it's sort of like one step removed.
Well, that's
or
my
a biometric.
point.
Right.
That's my point.
Yeah,
you
but
still have to have
your point is a YubiKey is still something you have. It's still something you have. I mean, my conclusion was, okay, given the technological advances, here's something that maybe we have to rethink the classical view of what constitutes, in this case, two-factor or multi-factor authentication. Similar to how NIST is finally caught up, or we're trying to catch up to NIST, saying, okay, expiring of passwords isn't necessarily a great thing to do, or doesn't. Oh
no, we're not trying to catch up.
Yeah, like, does it matter if you have two things that you know, or two things that you have, or one thing that you know, one thing that you have, given the technological advances? To your point, Jeff.
I don't know the exact date that NIST thing changed, but I can tell you right now that I've been a critic for a long time before that actually changed. So I think NIST is trying to catch up to us.
Fair enough. I mean, I first thought about the 2FA and the criteria when I was, prior to COVID. I was standing in line at TSA, and there was that other line, and I don't even remember what the thing's called because it's been so since I've flew Clear.
Yeah,
where they move you along even faster.
Well, there's TSA Pre and Clear are two separate things.
Right, but the Clear is the one where like somebody escorts you up, and
yes, that's correct.
That much quicker. But it occurred to me, their whole marketing pitch is based on using a different form of authentication rather than something you have, which is an ID. You're pre-approved, you're pre-assigned, and I don't know how they ID you, but it occurred to me, okay, how is that better? It's moving you along quicker, but they were trading one form of authentication for another, essentially. And then the world shut down, and I stopped thinking about it because I haven't flown in a plane.
Well, but also in the context of devices, and we did a great, mentioned before the webinar we did with Keeper. When you try and authenticate from a new device and that device isn't authorized, there's another process. So, like, how does that factor into the have and scenario where you got to do? Right. If I got a new laptop or it's an attacker's laptop, they happen to have my password, but that device isn't authorized, and there's a separate process from you got to have the multi-factor token and you got to know the password and or have the key, but that device isn't authorized. Jeff, I think you're spot on, and we got to rethink some of the criteria.
Well, I remember what it was. It was because I was standing in line thinking they're trading one form factor over another and implying that one is more effective than the other, which I don't think anybody would intuitively agree to. It's the combination of the three. And we interviewed somebody a while ago, and I forget. Maybe somebody can have a brainstorm and remember it. But we were talking about MFA, and they came up with a fourth criteria that sounded rather legitimate at the time, but I don't remember what it was.
Well, there's also IP address too. If it's a different device but same IP address, that's a different level of scrutiny from a new device with a new IP address. And I think we're starting to move in the right direction with a lot of the authentication mechanisms. We don't have it quite perfect yet, of course, but
to remind everybody that you can route an IP datagram with any source IP address in it across the internet, because most ISPs do not check reverse path forwarding. So
that's
anyway,
true.
Thanks, Jeff.
Just throw that out there.
Very true. I mean, you gotta design the system knowing that's possible, Jeff, right?
Yeah.
Where do we want to go next? I had a quick one on attackers are weaponizing 0 days at a record pace. So
this was neat.
Yeah, the MS-HTML RCE 0 day CVE 2021-400444. A week before the patch was released in September, they found that before the exploit was vulnerability was released, that researchers discovered scripts on GitHub that automated the creation of the exploit. Before that happened, like before the vulnerability was announced, there was already an automated system to create that exploit. I just want to know how they're doing that. I think that's really
interesting.
That's really cool.
Well, but we know that the development lifecycle of these things usually starts with hey, I found something interesting, to, hey, I just caused a denial of service. And that middle step is where you could spread some knowledge potentially before you get to, hey, this is RCE, remote code exploitable. So in that middle step, you could have enough leakage to have tools starting to be developed to get that next step.
Also, Jeff, I'm curious your thoughts on the machine learning aspect of it. If I can train an ML algorithm to go, like, here are some vulnerabilities of this class and type in Microsoft systems. Like, when a new one comes out, try and derive the exploit based on the data that I've given you already. That's probably feasible, right?
That would be a tough ML model to build.
Right, yeah. Because there's a lot of variables there, sure.
There's a heck of a lot of variables. But if you were able to constrain it to build the feature classification in a discrete way, maybe it has particular protocol parameters, and you have a narrow enough focus area, then it would be feasible.
Yeah, because I'm also thinking, too, like, when a vulnerability is found in Print Spooler, for example, we end up with lots of vulnerabilities and exploits in Print Spooler, and you might be able to model some of that.
I think it's more likely that, as we've seen, in fact, that first vulnerability found could be used to train a model, which would then, in turn,
find all that,
lead to an avalanche of a family of vulnerabilities.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I tried to read the technical description from Google Project Zero on a new Linux kernel memory corruption bug. It had something to do with, like, the TTYs and creation of TTYs and separation of certain things. Holy, like, amazing technical things. And in the Project Zero article, they referenced the Linux programming interface as a book, which I highly recommend. That if you want to understand this article, you probably want to have read that book or done some development in this area. Otherwise, you're probably, like me, you're going to be pretty lost when you read this article. I had to, go back and, study some of the memory corruption, how it happens. Actually came across Haroon Meer's paper on it that was published some time ago, where I think he did a great job of describing memory corruption as well, but of course, I mean, talking stack and heap overflows as types of memory corruption, right? The one thing that I did take from the article that I thought was pretty prolific was in Google Project Zero's blog post. They say at the end, in the conclusion, memory corruption is a big problem because small bugs, even outside security-related code, can lead to a complete system compromise. I thought that was pretty epic. Yeah, that's pretty. If you think about
this, went down to kernel level, right? Because
it did.
yeah, because we're talking I/O control stuff. Is the way I'm reading it, that's nuts.
Yeah, like the way Linux handles whether it's a terminal or console, right? A terminal that has to do with a serial communication or an internal command shell and things like that. It was, like, really deep in the Linux internals, but centered around, like, how userland manages that and how they're able to corrupt memory to then get into kernel land. It's just, it's awesome stuff.
I'm pretty sure the issue is
race conditions get involved here too.
Yep.
And you don't always win those.
Correct. I'm not sure if race conditions were involved in this one, but
no, I was making a reference to pre-show conversation. It's a piping issue.
Wow.
Some people will get it.
It's an amazing, right? And they had another write-up. I was hoping Tyler would be here to talk about, again, Google Project Zero, relaying DCOM authentication. I didn't tackle that one. Maybe we'll cover it next week, but that was another one where, like, their blog posts are just
my gosh.
Every step in the process of discovering and exploiting the vulnerability is covered in laborious detail.
Yeah, and amazingly not in laborious meaning, oh my god.
Yep.
But, like,
workflow flow diagrams, the whole thing. Just amazing research coming out of Google.
Yeah, that's That's yeah.
Well, I mean, when they put their minds to it, Google is a pretty damn good research house.
Yes.
And they're very, very methodical. And I mean, it's interesting, though, because I would expect that anything they research to have issues reproducing. I recently talked to somebody that came out of Google after 6 or 7 years at Google. And he's like, I'm having trouble in the marketplace. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, getting a job. I don't know any of the tools. I mean, you've been doing this for years, man. He goes, in Google land, you're not allowed to use commercial tools. You're only allowed to use the tools that are Google approved. And so I literally don't know anything that's out on the market right now. I've got to relearn my entire industry. It was so weird.
Yeah. It's a different universe. That's an interesting comment. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I mean, they created their own infrastructure and architecture from the ground up. So, and from the very beginning, right? The way they implemented search was like all their own creation.
They're all their own.
Kind of like the time NSA had to go from their own operating system and programming language to Unix and C.
You were there for that.
I was there for that.
Yep.
I remember compiling Unix kernels. I've been there.
Oh, so you use Gentoo?
Well, he said Unix, not Linux. So.
Oh, right. Good point.
Unix.
Unix.
See, I am
Nobody
still
uses
awake over
Unix. Yeah. Nobody uses Unix anymore. Come on, get with the times.
I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say no one.
Well, I mean,
but that's again an interesting study. As you know, I talked about measuring the level of maturity in pushing towards cloud and DevOps style infrastructure. I think would be also an easier study to measure if you're non-Windows or Mac, for example, like what's the adoption in different verticals of Linux versus the different flavors of Unix.
Yep.
It is an interesting question, though. I mean, is anybody still rolling Unix? I mean, is it still maintained? Is Slayer still out there?
You mean on the System 5 branch of the tree? Is what you're saying?
What's out there for?
Well, either brand. I mean, is anybody still main?
Well,
is AIX still out there?
OpenBSD, NetBSD, and FreeBSD is still out there, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
True.
So, Paul, this sort of reminds me of your story number. Crap, where did it go? Something about legacy systems.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about that one yet.
So the question was like, who's still using like Unix?
Actually, I shouldn't say that. I have a friend that just told me that his company has to buy all new mainframes because they're running everything APL.
Yeah.
And that's terrifying.
But I don't know if it's terrifying. I mean, these platforms are still out there. I think we tend to focus on the shiny new hotness and cloud adoption and enterprise Linux and things like that, and containers, serverless. And we don't want to forget that there's still AS400s out there. There's still mainframes out there.
So it's your story number 4, 5 reasons the public sector must move away from legacy IT. And the one that got me from your description was that the GAO analyzed 65 federal agency legacy systems and revealed the 10 most critical systems were 8 to 51 years old.
Wow.
But they were 51 years old. You're talking, I mean, that's even pre-AS400. You're talking mainframe.
You're talking 1970s.
Yeah. So you're talking old school IBM mainframes.
Jeff, it's called job security, buddy.
That article I found interesting, not from the eco-friendly perspective. They cited an Accenture report claiming migrations to the public cloud can reduce CO2 emissions by 59 million tons per year, which equates to taking 22 million cars off the road. Of course, I haven't found where it says how much migration, if that's total migration to the public cloud, but whole section, I'm kind of like, huh?
The cloud is still someone else's computer. I mean, it's still running on a computer somewhere, whether that's yours or hosted in a, Amazon data center.
Well, my guess is the presumption is that you're running, a box and you're only using a percentage of the computing capability, the horsepower, where with all the virtualization and containerization that goes on, even though it's somebody else's hardware, it's much more efficient. It's fuel efficient,
and cooling is more efficient, and
It's still a compelling argument. I mean, there are 5 reasons. One was security, and one is, well, it's better for the environment. Guess which one's probably more popular in terms of a reason?
Right. I mean, there's also power consumption. More and more, I'm hearing about the constraints on the grid across the U.S. and how, like, with a lot of cases, we're just really running out of power.
Yeah. Right. I'm fascinated that security even made the list, and they listed it number 1, but all the other reasons I think are much more compelling: performance, cost efficiency, eco-friendly. What was the last one? Flexibility. Those are going to win long before the security argument.
Right. But it's hard to compete with it works. I think is why we end up with all this legacy infrastructure.
Yeah, but it's hard to compete when it works. But according to your description here, that the government plans to spend $100 billion this year on that IT, most of it going towards maintaining those older systems.
Yeah.
Does it really work at the greater majority of $100 billion?
There's an economic factor to that.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
For sure.
Yeah, but there's the fear of the unknown. Nobody knows how it really works. It's been chugging away for so long. Bob, who started in the mailroom department, is the only one that knows COBOL. He keeps it humming. He's getting tired.
But it's true though. Like, I think they're making decisions like, okay, well, let's just go buy a new mainframe, run that COBOL code, rather than we'd have to create a whole team and like rewrite the entire application from the ground up, which is just one part of the expense, because then you got to test it, then you got to put it in production. I mean, all of us on the panel, all of us on the show, and so many of us listening have been down this road. It's friggin' painful, and it's expensive, and quite frankly, I mean, Larry, kind of your point, like, it could be more expensive to rewrite these applications and redeploy them and retest them and get them working than it would be to just go buy a new mainframe or update the hardware. So maybe that $100 billion is actually a deal.
Maybe.
Right?
Well, especially if you're talking about migrating to the cloud, and who's going to do all that development work? And
but the other things to think about, it's $100 billion this year. It's $100 billion next year, and it's $100 billion the year after that.
You got to play the long game. You're right.
Yeah, and some of these we've been doing for 51 years. Like, it's not going to be $100 billion but if it's $200 billion this year, and it's $3 billion next year,
right,
and $3 billion and $5 billion and $5 billion and $7 billion, like you got to
your long term return.
Part of that is a psychology game, right? This is what I call the psychology of the cable TV bill. Right? As long as the bill doesn't change and it keeps coming in, like there's a comfort level, right?
But it's a great point. Segueing off Larry's comment, right? Like, because your bill's going to go up, and you're going to go from $100 billion to $200 billion, but then after that, you're going to go down, right? But it's that initial spike, the job psychology point that's like, oh, that's scary.
Josh is going to.
Have I ever told you my story about the company I worked for, and we had a beeping?
Yes. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
There's a delay. It's really distracting. There's a delay on Josh's video. But it's like Josh is talking in a kung fu movie right now.
It's awesome. So tell us about the beeping.
Tell us about how you want to avenge your master's death.
So what happened was, we're literally working one day, and all of a sudden there's a beeping, and we're like, what the? It sounded like a UPS battery or something, that kind of very, very annoying beeping, the kind that Larry does. And so we're looking for it. We can't find it. We finally realized that one of the support columns of the building is beeping. We're like, that's kind of weird.
Beep.
We pull the desk away that was next to it. Oh my God, Larry, I should have shut my damn mouth. And we pulled the desk away and realized there's a door in the support column, but it's hidden. So we bang on it, push it, but finally, you got to press gently, and it pops open a magnetic lock thing.
Beep.
So we open the door, and there's a machine in there. We all look at each other like, what the is this thing. It's it's like 5 feet across, 4 feet high. It looks like a church organ, you know.
More appropriately, it would have been, what the beep is this thing?
Yeah, well done, sir. And there's cables coming out of it. And we're like, those are really thick cables. Those aren't like, you know, and I'm thinking like RG58, 59, that type of thing, a thin net. No, try Twin-X. Okay, if you're not old and white-haired like Jeff and me, Twin-X is where there's 2 coaxial cables going through the same cable. It was used for mainframes. Like, what the hell is this? It's still beeping. We're not sure what the hell's going on. We popped the front covers. It had a cabin underneath, and there's some instructions in there. Cool, there's some instructions. Maybe we can get this thing working. Then I look over at the door, and hanging on the back of the door to that little cabinet are the 8-inch floppies. Okay. And we're trying to reset this thing. We're trying to reboot this thing. We're trying to and the 8-inch floppies are basically toast. They've been sitting there for, you know, the over cosmic ray radiation had made them drift enough that they were done, right? But you know what we found? We found a service contract in there with a phone number. So we call procurement. We're like, is this service contract still active? They're like, yeah, we're still paying $400 a month. Okay, we'll call the phone number. And they'd been doing it for 15 or 20 years. We call the phone number. We're like, hi. Somebody answered. We're like, hi, what is this thing? They're like, huh? Read us some numbers. So we read the numbers off the service contract. She's like,
they said C-Tech Astronomy or something.
Yeah.
No, she's like,
Cooties rat semen.
She's like, wait a minute, we've got a problem here. We're like, what's that? She goes, that's an active service contract. We're like, yes, we know, we're still paying. We don't have anybody that can service it. What do you mean? The last guy, hang on, the last guy that can service that died 17 years ago.
That sounds like a you problem.
I'm like, okay, so
that's not a me
things.
problem. Yeah.
I said 2 things. She goes, what's that? I'm like, 1, I want a refund on 17 years of fees.
Right.
She goes, well, I was like, no, there's no argument. You were not capable of performing the contract. Done. Next. Second, what the hell is it? She's like, I don't know. So she gave us some numbers off their copy of the service contract. We used the magic power of Google to look it up. It turns out it was a dumb terminal controller for the AS400 in the basement.
Who are you calling dumb now?
We found out there was one person still with a dumb terminal. We replaced it with a PC with a Hummingbird emulator, 3270 emulator. Okay. And threw this thing in the trash. But the point is, that service contract was never examined.
See, I always thought, Josh, I always thought that it was like a fable. It was an old IT fable that there was a server in the wall. But you just provided so many details that I can't call you out on it just being complete and total like IT fable. Like that's
no
real.
This was actually real. It freaked us out that the support column was beeping. I'm like, the building's going to fall down? What the hell, you know?
And actually, it reminds me of a story I just learned called The Story of Magic. Does anybody know the story of Magic? I posted it on
yes. Magic and more magic. Is this the one?
Oh, yeah. I had a story about Magic in 3270 when I was sniffing the network.
Read it. You can read that later. It's an interesting story.
Oh, my quick story was 3270. I was like, when did they implement like telnet encryption over telnet? And I'm like, oh wait, that's not encryption, that's 3270. This was before Google, right? I was like, wait, what is this? And I'm like breaking out manuals and like I'm like,
it's TN3270.
TN3270.
And ironically, telnet supports encryption.
It does. It does not.
Yes, it does. It's written in the RFC.
It is in the RFC. Yeah.
What does it feel like ROT 13 twice?
I don't know. Yeah, no. What was that, Jeff?
Has anybody ever written encryption for telnet?
Yes.
And don't say secure show.
I've actually seen it used once.
I actually, the best encryption for telnet. Seriously, not a joke. This took forever to fix.
Tunnel it over SSH. No, wait.
No. The best encryption for telnet is very simple. So a friend of mine was working on some DVRs for buses, and he's trying to break into the damn thing legally for the company that he was working for, and he found out that telnet was open. He's like, son of a bitch, let me try. So he used Hydra, and thing was running for like weeks. Finally, he's like, damn it, I can't figure this out. And he asks me, and I I was away over the phone. It didn't work. As we're talking, I think I acted as rubber duck debugging. He goes, "Huh? What's this option in Hydra? Oh, it's the one for checking a blank password. Never. Oh shit, it worked." So just use a blank password in Telnet. Nobody will ever get it.
Sometimes there's no password on Telnet. We actually have a device in the studio where there's no username, there's no password. Like, it's just Telnet. And when you telnet to the device, you're just on the console. And I just unplugged the Ethernet at that point.
Hey, so speaking of really old stories, I'm desperate for us to reach the next one, which is Google stripping FTP from Chrome.
Oh God, I'm going to need
the internet is safe now. We're all saved. Everything is secure because we've taken FTP out of the browser.
I'm going to need ice for this.
Right? Like, I just don't understand why this...
No, seriously, I need ice.
Why was this so...
How are we going to watch the Star Wars movie now?
How many people on this show as hosts have ever dealt with FTP and freaking firewall configuration? And how many times did you want to, like, totally shoot yourself and go find the author of the RFC and choke them 10 times?
Yep.
You know why? Why? Because of that stupid port negotiation and the reverse connection that came back in.
Oh, I remember that now. I had tried my best to put that out of my brain, and you just brought it back.
Wait, Joff, what is that called? PASV?
Yeah.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's like, why did you guys decide to do this? What the hell?
How did that work, Joff? I don't. Like I said, I've put it out of my brain because it's such a painful memory.
Passive mode. Thank you, Dimitri. Yeah, it's passive mode.
Passive. Oh, who?
PASV.
PASV. Oh, passive mode was just awful.
What
did I did write that in the RFC?
Did I just win nerd cred for that?
Did.
Wow.
You did. I had forgotten about that.
Wow. Right. So it's gone out of the browser, out of the Google browser, which means it's pretty much gone out of the browser. I didn't say that. But
still an Internet Explorer according to the article. Not Edge though, because Edge is based on Chromium, but
Edge is yeah. Yeah, we're not going to miss it, honestly. Long live FTP. It was great while it lasted. Let's give it a blessing and send it on its way.
Well, I think in Sport of Legacy, people still use FTP.
Yeah.
Just why do we need it in the browser?
Yeah. We have a thing called on the command line called FTP that you can use.
I was going to say, who does FTP from a browser? That sounds foreign to
users that don't want to use the command line or know how to use the command line.
I bet you the Internet Software Consortium and some of the other top level entities that run the internet specifically for distributing WHOIS information, for distributing the root DNS name server hints file still support FTP. I guarantee it.
Well, I think what killed FTP was things like Dropbox and Drop and things like that, right? Because now users
thought MTV killed everything.
Yeah,
I thought video killed the Radio Star.
Yeah. But Dropbox killed the FTP star. Is that?
No. Wait a minute. I've got a beef here. And I don't know.
You've got a browser exploitation framework?
No. Like,
keep it in your pants, Larry.
They removed FTP from the browser.
Right.
But I think
we just said that. Keep up.
But Gopher is still a valid protocol.
Is Finger? Because Joff is really anxious about that.
I know he is.
Finger's not a protocol.
No, Finger is a protocol.
It's a protocol?
It's a protocol.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
yes.
Finger is a protocol.
I stand corrected.
Actually, you're sitting.
All right, I sit corrected.
Hopefully not.
I'm desperate to say I used to love fingering systems. Oh God, I did say it.
And the only reason I know this is because I actually went to Google to look for a bunch of Gopher sites, and there's a list out there.
You came up pictures of gophers?
No. There's a page out there from 1995 that lists a bunch of Gopher sites, or recipes and jokes and internet tools and sound files, including the Grateful Dead and so forth. And you click on the links, and it tries to go to a Gopher site.
I had my Gopher period. I loved Gopher. Gopher was the bomb. Man.
Yeah, like
that was like BBS on steroids. Was Gopher.
That's an accurate description, Joe.
Now, did you ever use Waze? WAIS?
Oh, yes, I absolutely did, man. I was in the academic community, man. Waze was like popular amongst faculty at that time.
Wide area information search for those non-old people.
Your nerd points on this show, and also if there were an award for the most references to legacy technology on a podcast, we are in the running.
Yes, we had just
in the running.
All the
have we brought up Archie or Veronica yet?
I was trying to think of other protocols. Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
So do we need to talk about...
what did we use to probe networks before Nmap?
Strobe.
Who wrote Strobe?
Same people that wrote Satan? Is that true? No.
No, that's not true.
Satan was somebody No, wait, it's someone it's someone we know that wrote Strobe, isn't it?
Yep. Oh, it's a very famous name.
Fuck, and I can't think of it. Oh. Ding. I suck at trivia.
Beep.
Julian Assange.
That's right. I knew it was someone famous like that. Yes.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. Just lost all respect. Can we come back to the current century now, please?
Oh, I think we were still on the.
Wait, Josh just disappeared.
We lost Josh.
Yeah, he was like,
"That's it.
Mic drop. I'm out."
He had to drop at 9.
He's like, he joined a podcast. He
puts his kid to bed every night at 9, like clockwork. He's
1998 called and they want their podcast back.
Yeah. Wait. 1998. They didn't have podcasts. Never mind. But they had NPR.
We're in a weird multiverse right now.
Yeah, but they had NPR, so we're all good.
Well, but we got news readers. People still use news groups. News groups is the one we forgot. News groups are still.
Net news.
Yeah, we forgot about Usenet news groups.
NNTP.
Oh boy.
I feel like I've had a bit of a cleanse. Can we move on?
Yeah, we've gone through the legacy technology. U.S. is banning sales of cyber attack tools. It's being
You're not coming up to the future much with that article,
right?
Can you say Clipper?
Wow.
No, that's
you say PGP?
No, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so that's Anyway,
moving on.
Next story.
So what's it going to be?
It's funny. I did say I don't believe we can regulate our way out of this problem, but that's the same thing with encryption export technologies. We couldn't regulate ourselves out of that problem either. So,
nope.
So it really is next story.
But we're much more mature now.
Congress can't regulate itself out of a toilet bowl right now. So come on.
No need. So this is mixing old and new. Have you seen so there's requirements for Windows 11 that it requires newer chips, and I forget what is the exact thing that it's after. I know it's obviously designed for newer PCs, but is it like the TPM platform or something? There's some features in the chips that Windows 11 is requiring. Now, what's interesting is I even think I took a screenshot of it. I'm running Windows 10 in a virtual machine, and it told me that my hardware is not capable of supporting Windows 11. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm running on VMware on a Linux system that has a 24-core AMD Threadripper on it. Like, wait a minute, you're telling me that my PC can't run Windows 11. So what the fuck do I need to run Windows 11? I don't understand. Like, what? What? I don't get it.
Clearly, why you need a Pentium 4.
Yeah.
I know why you need to run it, man. Because the start button moved to the center of the screen. That's why you need to run it.
But apparently this article, it's full page pop up, great. So they got it running on a 15-year-old Pentium 4 chip.
Yep.
Which is awesome.
So who's dissing the old ways now?
Right? So it was an Intel Pentium 4 661 3.6 gigahertz, 4 gigabytes of DDR2 RAM.
Of course, the OS runs a little bit slow on the Pentium 4 chip. Right. Nevertheless, it shows Windows 11 can run on decade-old hardware, even though they're selectively rolling out to new PCs.
I'm not sure how they pulled it off.
Weren't they saying that WSL2 with Windows 11 is highly optimized? At least that's what I was reading, and that the Linux kernels that are running on top of Windows 11 are running nearly, very, very close, as fast as bare metal.
Wow.
So that's interesting.
I mean, or you could just run Linux on the bare metal.
Bare metal. Or you could.
Runs great on actual hardware.
Yeah,
or virtual machines.
If you did that, Paul, you wouldn't have the start button in the middle of the screen.
Oh, you can totally get a window manager that you can customize to put the start button wherever the hell you want.
That's true.
So Paul, reading through this article here, it says that Microsoft said that PC for Windows 11 must include TPM 2.0.
TPM. Okay, so I thought it was TPM.
Unless you do a manual installation of Windows 11 and follow some instructions on how to bypass that TPM 2.0 requirement.
How many floppies does it take to load Windows 11?
Oh, good God.
Oh, God.
Good God.
Is that like a potty joke?
So put that in perspective, Jeff. I downloaded NVIDIA drivers for a graphics card, and it was like 864 megabytes for just the graphics card drivers. Even that in and of itself, that's a lot of floppies.
That's
a lot of floppies.
It's about 550.
Well, if you got a 1.44 meg floppy, right?
Yep.
That's a lot of floppies.
It's about
that's 600 floppies.
I was going to say it's about 550.
That's a lot.
Yeah, quick, do the math. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of
also, a pretty cool story. So Mudge on Twitter. So as of version 7.2, LoftCrack is now open source. Yeah, I mean, if you're a security nerd like most of us, and I know many of you listening, right? Security nerds, it's a really cool Twitter thread to read through. Mudge kind of gives his reflections and some stats on LoftCrack, which is interesting. And then I think it was Weld Pond goes through the whole lineage of LoftCrack ownership. He said it started with Loft Heavy Industries, almost was sold to Network Associates, then Security Tool Corp, assets that didn't go to @Stake, then it did go to @Stake, then it was Symantec, then it was Loft Holdings, then it was TerraHash, then it was transferred to Dildog, Weld Pond, and Mudge, and now it's open source. That was pretty. That was pretty cool.
It's a good little bit of history, is what
this
is.
Right? This is quite a bit of nostalgia episode tonight.
Yes, it is. This is That's keeping. Cool. So I started reading through some of the source code because I wanted to read the comments and wanted to see if there's any like ridiculous like swear words and like ridiculous comments. And I didn't. I was disappointed. I really quick.
Those guys were serious about what they were doing.
Yeah, they were. All the comments were very serious. Yeah, it was very. All the comments are very serious. I'm like, my comments are nowhere near that serious in the code. In a lot of other people's comments, you can find like ridiculous things. I wanted to find ridiculous things. I found no ridiculous. So, maybe I need to look harder, but I didn't find anything ridiculous.
But they had 7 major revisions to fix that, owned by more than one corporation.
I mean, there are still developers today taking out ASCII art penises from my code. So, I mean, there's that.
Wow.
He's not wrong.
So in historical context, we had Crack and John the Ripper for doing password cracking on Unix-style passwords, which back in the day were limited to 8 characters.
Right.
And then LoftCrack came along because people started running Windows and started replacing Unix workstations with Windows PCs. And the early, help me out, Larry or Joff, the early passwords, they could be 8 or more characters, but they were built sort of 4 characters at a time.
LAN hashes.
It was actually 7.
7.
Yeah.
14 characters, 7 piece. LAN.
Encrypted,
but not salted.
Chunks. Yeah,
right. Nope, not salted. And if
non-salted.
if you could calculate the last 2 bytes, you could So it was triple DES, but not a full 3 triple DES. Iterations.
Right.
And you know what the saddest part is? For the record, I still find LAN passwords in environments today.
Yeah, they hang around.
Yep.
Like a bad smell.
It's very true. Very true. The other thing that was cool is they created a Hashcat shared library, which I thought was kind of neat. It's like Hashcat implemented as a shared library, which is now open source. It's pretty cool. Let's talk about psychology.
Yeah, I was looking at that.
Right, and how you can save your cybersecurity awareness training program. And look, I love Yavid. Awesome dude. Can't wait to hang out with Yavid again. But I'm going to kind of, I want to pick on the concept, not Yavid's article. He did a great job writing the article. I want to take that, away from him in any, shape, form, or fashion. But when I looked at it through, my lens, the solution to creating a better cybersecurity awareness and training program was based on like three things that are the three main points usually that I see when people talk about cybersecurity awareness. So he says people are clever and like to work things out for themselves. So ensure your awareness program takes this into account, does not patronize employees or make things needlessly difficult. And this is the kind of like my kind of theme point from that is everyone says make it a game, not too hard, but not too easy when you're doing game design, right? That's a very, very, one of the most fundamental concepts to creating a game. Then he says short and more frequent topics can be better than lengthy training sessions, which take several hours. So, the advice is always break up your training materials and exercises into smaller chunks and give them to your employees in those smaller, easy to consume chunks. Then he says, part of creating a culture of cybersecurity involves removing the stigma associated with fear that comes with having to report a mistake. So, like, don't punish your users and encourage them to, like, if they make mistakes, that's okay because it's human nature. So my take is
you mean like publishing the names of the people that failed the latest phishing test?
Exactly. Punishment does not work is always the mantra. So, like, this is like the same points we've been evangelizing and implementing for our users for years, but the fact remains that like phishing campaigns are still wildly successful.
They work, right?
And they still work. So like if these recommendations for cybersecurity awareness training actually worked, we wouldn't have wildly successful phishing campaigns, but that's not the case. Like, this stuff isn't working, yet we're still recommending all of these things that, cybersecurity awareness training should have these components and should have like these ingredients to the recipe, and this will come out and make an awesome meal. It makes a freaking crappy meal, in my opinion, because it doesn't work. Also, I love you, Yavid. Like, love you, man. Not trying to disrespect you in any way, shape, form, or fashion, but you kind of got me on my soapbox about this.
Yeah, we got it all wrong. I mean, that's the take home lesson here. It's like you can't punish people for wanting to click on stuff. I mean, you can send any information security professional phish email, and if it's attractive enough, they'll click on it too.
Right, but that's my point, Jeff. Like, you can punish your users or not punish your users and reward your users, use positive reinforcement and all those wonderful things we talk about. The fact remains, Joff, Larry, like, we can construct a phishing text, going to be successful. And it doesn't matter whether you punish your users or not, doesn't matter. We're still going to get people.
Yep. My beef, well, I've got several beefs. One is the fact that most security awareness training, because that's a requirement for PCI, so I have to review the programs.
Yep.
Mostly these days, it's all about the phish. There is nothing else. Whereas in my first life as a QSA, it was all about picking strong passwords. There's a lot more to it than that. That's one beef. The second beef is when you use certain companies' programs, and I've never seen the interface, but when you get a phish that has information contained in it to make it look like it's from an inside person, like your supervisor, and there's information in it that's not publicly available in terms of organizational structure and whatnot, I think that's rather invalid. But to your point, Paul, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Phishing campaign, phishing checks are stupid. What my company did that might just be a customer of one of these particular types of phishing campaign programs, and every time I'd see the thing come out, there's a little button in Outlook you're supposed to push if you suspect that the email is a phish, and I've always wondered, does that actually report a suspected phishing email, or is that just tied to the package and you correctly identified, yep, that was one of our phishing emails that you sent? I don't know the answer to that. But I always wonder, why isn't there technology in place in our email system that detects this stuff and kind of eliminates in the first place? There ought to be some sort of automation that protects. What my company did that's made the hugest impact on passing the phishing campaigns is they now put a banner on top of every email that comes in from an outside email address.
Yeah.
And it's worked like magic. People now look longer at the email, and the success rate of phishing campaigns is plummeted. Go figure.
That's actually been a common implementation around a lot of organizations, and I would agree with the strategy, because you cannot blame the people. Stuff's going to come in from the outside. But you can give them that warning to say, hey, just think twice before you act on this information, because this has come in from the outside. I think it's an effective strategy. It's a simple strategy, and why not? And I think to go further with that, people need a way to report when they just feel like things are not right. Like they've clicked on something and their system's acting quote unquote weird in their behavior, from their perspective, right? Their point of view. Well, that needs to be a reportable event. That's a positive reinforcement for reporting that. Like, my system's acting weird. I don't know why, right? I'm naively saying, but I did click on something. Please don't punish me for it, but something's going on here. We need to get back to the reward system, not the oh my God, don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, but even in a reward system, like it doesn't really work, right? Because people are still going to click that stuff, and phishing campaigns are going to be successful. I really think the whole approach to training needs to change. I mean, you could probably go back and I've been a proponent of cybersecurity awareness training. I suppose I still am, but I don't think we've got the formula right. And I think we need to do some drastically different things, because phishing is still wildly successful. And
you know what we used to do in the DoD, and it's loosely what a lot of the models were built off of, at least in the early days, and is built into the PCI requirement, frankly. It's multiple methods. Email reminders back when you used to log on and get a message of the day. I saw companies, when you used to get a paycheck with a pay stub, there'd be a message, on that. Newsletters, posters, just stick posters up, and NSA was, I hope I'm not revealing a deep dark secret, they were famous for their security posters. They ought to be in a museum somewhere, but they ignored copyright information. There was always, stealing Star Wars images, stealing Looney Tunes characters, movie characters. Pretty sure they weren't paying royalties for that, but they would come up. I mean, you've seen them from World War II, loose lips, sink ships and stuff like that. I mean, constant reminders that security is your responsibility is essentially what it was, with the occasional focus on a particular different aspect of security. It was successful as it could be back in the day, and I don't see that practiced hardly at all anymore. It's reduced to a 30-minute video that you have to watch once a year and sign off on, or it's the damn phishing campaigns.
Yep. Yeah. And arguably that 30-minute video you have to watch, nobody really watches, because they all know that the questions at the end are going to be brain dead.
Yep.
Yeah. What are you supposed to do if you suspect a hack attack? And the answer is report it. A. B. Report it. C. Report it. D. Pick your nose.
Yeah, but going back to Jeff's example, I think it needs to be more like the lessons of loose lips sink ships, right?
Yeah.
It needs to be, if unsolicited communications come to you, don't trust it, right? I mean, that's really what most of all the gamification and phishing awareness like comes down to like these very simple common denominators. And Jeff, I like your example of just reinforcing in different messaging those common denominators. I think we've gotten way too specific in trying to train our users of like how to spot phishing attacks and all that stuff, and gamifying it and reward systems.
We put too much responsibility on them.
It should just come down to changing your basic processes so you don't succumb to a scam, right?
I mean, and I think about that, and I think you said you were reading Code Girls as well, and you think about loose lips sink ships.
That was literally the case.
That was literally the case, and that was the thing that they put up. They put those posters up in the offices in the 40s for all those folks, and like people didn't say anything.
Yeah,
like the story, and I don't want to.
Different. I mean, that book definitely describes the cultural and social things that were happening at that time because the country was at war. It really kind of sheds light on that stuff about everyone kind of came together and was like, because it really matters right now. And I think that's one thing in cybersecurity awareness training today, like people don't think it really matters. Like they think, I can click shit and like
no big deal,
whatever,
they'll fix it.
World War II, like literally ships would be blown up if that information.
But I mean, like one of the prime examples that in the book they tell about the story about there's two women that lived together, that they shared an apartment together.
Was it Dot Braden and what was the other one? What was her name? She had a nickname for it. It was great. The stories behind all those women were great.
They literally shared an apartment. They couldn't afford a great apartment, so they actually had to share a bed together.
Well, they would do the hot bedding. Like there would be 3 or 4 women sharing an apartment with 3 beds, and they'd work opposite shifts, or they would actually sleep in the same bed. Like those were the times. But I think where you're going is they didn't fucking talk about work.
Right, because they worked in different departments.
Outside the building, they did not talk about work.
They didn't talk about what they did at work.
Yeah.
Because they worked in different departments, they felt that they weren't allowed to talk about what they did at work, even though they worked for the same agency in the same building, but in different departments. And they didn't talk about it.
And when they wrote The Soldiers, which I thought was it was really not only a great security lesson in about messages and ciphering messages, deciphering messages. It was really about the secrets that they had to keep, so much so that when they would write the soldiers to keep up morale, they would write it was male soldiers at the time, right? That was who was fighting overseas, that they would never talk about anything work related. It was when they wrote their significant others, when they wrote just random people to just correspond with them so they had letters to read. It was, hey, we went to the beach that weekend, we went shopping at this place to go get dinner. It was never about anything related.
Yeah, we rode the bus, and the bus came late, and we got caught in the rain, and we were soaked, and nothing about anything that they were doing, where they worked, who they worked for, what they were
awesome
doing.
at keeping secrets. The one thing I got from that book, they were awesome at keeping secrets. And it was interesting. Like, is that part of the training? Is it part of the mindset and culture at the time?
It's culture. It's absolutely the culture.
And admittedly,
which we've lost, or it's never translated out into the private sector.
So it was culture, and but admittedly, these women were coming in many cases from portions of the country and their upbringing where naivete was a thing. Like, some of them were from a farm and had never been to the city, had never been on a bus or a train, and had no idea, but they kept their mouth shut because they knew they needed to.
Right. I mean, so much so I was at the point in the book where they deciphered the Japanese surrender. Like, they deciphered the messages.
Nice.
And they all had to swear in that they would not disclose that information because that had to come from the president that Japan had surrendered. So these code breakers were some of the first people in the world to know that the Japanese had surrendered, and they couldn't talk about it with anyone. They were literally sworn to secrecy. Like, hand on Bible had to swear at that point that they would not tell a single soul.
Did you finish it yet?
I'm almost done.
Okay,
I'm at that point. I'm at the point where the war is essentially ended. Effectively ended.
I got about 2.5 hours left in the audio book. So,
I mean, Paul, part of having worked for that organization and having to get
having to swear allegiance and forfeit my Fifth Amendment rights as a condition of employment, and even being signed out of a lot of the compartmented programs. There's some things that I have to keep secret to the grave.
Right.
There's a limitation on some of them. Like, I think I've showed you the military cryptanalytic books I've had before, volume 1 and 2. Sometime in the last year or so, volume 3 was declassified, which Jericho, I wonder if he's gotten his hands on one yet. If the museum ever reopens, I'll go in and get to look at it again. But volumes 1 and 2 were manual crypto systems and early machine crypto systems like Enigma and Purple and things like that. From World
they
War
talk
II.
about. I think what doesn't get a lot of press, Jeff, that I wanted to ask you about, because I'm pretty sure it's been declassified because they talk about it in the book, are the Japanese cipher systems, JN25, in the ones they called Purple. Right, we're Japanese. We hear about it because there was a movie, the Imitation Game, and it really popularized Enigma. But like, I want to go study some of the Japanese codes because I think that's really cool. Like, they haven't really been, circulated, I think, publicly enough. Yeah. This book was a great kind of window into that. And I'm sure, Jeff, you studied those when you worked for said agency, right? I kind of like, when I'm listening to the book, I'm like, if you're a cryptanalyst at NSA, you probably studied that stuff that the early code breakers were working on in World War II.
Well, and to your point about the keeping secrets and not revealing things that they know ahead of time, there's also the element of when you have information that in theory only 2 people in the world know about,
right?
It's information that you want to take action on. You have to make a decision of whether you want to compromise your source, because
or they deceived, right? They flew planes overhead beforehand, so the Japanese would think it was a plane that spotted those ships,
even though the planes
that
knew
was
where
the
to fly.
case. It's because the code breakers broke that code, and they knew exactly where those ships were.
And they knew right where to send the planes to make that deception happen.
Right.
Yeah. The classic example, other than what you're talking about, which is the Battle of Midway, was shortly after Pearl Harbor, they decrypted messages and found out that the architect of the Pearl Harbor attack, Yamamoto, was going to be on a plane flying somewhere, and they sent an observation plane out to accidentally discover an enemy plane and then send in fighter pilots to pick it down. But that had to be very carefully orchestrated and coordinated. I'll counter also that as good as the physical security and the culture of security was within the government back in the day, we still had some pretty huge breaches.
Yeah, they talked about a physical pen test that happened at Arlington Hall. Is Arlington Hall is that in Virginia? Is the Arlington reference Arlington, Virginia, or is Arlington Hall closer to DC area?
I cannot confirm nor deny that. Means I don't know. I mean, I remember. Google it. You can Google it as well.
Yeah, it did kind of spark a lot of curiosity.
Yeah, I lost my thought now. I wasn't talking about physical compromise. I was talking about espionage cases. Where like Walker Whitworth case, which happened when I was there. A guy had been stealing the keys to the crypto systems for 10, 15 years, passing his polygraphs, doing all the things.
Right.
But getting by this is physical security safeguards and all that kind of stuff. And the only way it was discovered was that he went through a divorce and his wife flipped on him.
Oh yeah, I think I remember you telling that story. Yeah.
Well, it's probably in a book somewhere. I'll find the book and you can read. You can listen to it.
Jeff, I do want you to read Code Girls, and I do want to do at least a segment, on that, because I think your perspective is certainly unique. Hearing all that stuff. So, and I thought it was fascinating, and it sparks a lot of thoughts about cybersecurity today. Secrets, privacy, securing messages, all that stuff, and to think about it in the context of World War II and then today, I think there's a lot of really cool things to talk about.
Well, there's a lot of parallels, and hopefully it provides clarification or just understanding why I say things like "there's nothing new about security."
Yeah.
It's because you think you're coming up with an original idea. You're probably not. It's funny. I did the prep call with Tony Sager this afternoon. I don't think he would mind me saying this on the air. And we're just catching up. I hadn't talked to him in a while, and we were talking about the need for people like us from our generation at NSA to be able to, well, we were talking about, public speaking, and is that, because we're technically supposed to go through public affairs and get permission anytime we write a blog or a resume or anything like that. And, Tony is much more publicly recognizable than I am. And he's like, oh, I just have, every time there's a new director of public affairs, I get in touch with them and say, hey, I'm a public figure. I do this. And they say, oh, yeah, that's fine. And he's like, and that extends to people like me and Ron Gula and others that are out there. And we were just talking about how it's so important to tell the stories, not just, demonstrate that NSA actually was more clueful than maybe some people think they are back in the day, but for the lessons learned and just the context that goes into all of it. So stay tuned. He's going to get in touch with folks, and we're trying to come up with a more formal method of recording some of our histories. I mean, I've done stuff specifically that is historical, but I'm just one of many, and there's lots of stories out there that really could and should be told. Now, in contrast, we're members of a mailing list of mostly retirees, and some of them that are older are still very tight-lipped, and they're very uncomfortable about the historical remembrances that go on just on the email list. Because, I mean, it was changing about the time that I started working at NSA, but I grew up in Maryland and never knew there was such a thing as NSA.
Right.
You weren't allowed to say that you worked for the National Security Agency. You could only say at the time you worked for the Department of Defense. I mean, I knew people in the private sector in other contexts that worked for super secret agency, and they would never tell me where they worked until one day I bumped into them in the parking lot at NSA. I'm like, hey, you bastard, you work in the same place that I work. But you're driving around in your little Austin Healey, wearing a trench coat, pretending to be a spy. You're just probably some stupid analyst like most of the rest of us. Anyway, I'll shut up now.
I did want to cover one more story before we wrap up this evening, and it's a blog post from the MSRC, and it's a congratulations to the top MSRC 2021 Q3 security researchers, and it's a congratulatory and very positive post about the bug hunters that are reporting bugs to Microsoft, and they've listed everyone's either names or aliases or Twitter handles. Most are, in fact, aliases. Their point kind of ranking, thanking them for reporting bugs to Microsoft. And, in preparation for this particular episode, there was a lot of chatter about the Missouri case that we covered, I think, as it was breaking last week, right? But there was also a lot of chatter about Apple's treatment of security researchers, which we covered last week as well. And I thought this was like in really sharp contrast to the way Apple treats security researchers versus the way that Microsoft treats them. So like Apple, if you're listening, like if you see this is the way that researchers want to be treated. This is how it's done. The recognition and respect for security researchers goes a long way in embracing the efforts that security researchers are putting into reporting bugs to Microsoft. Microsoft has fully embraced that. And that wasn't always the case, but I think pretty quickly Microsoft realized that they had to embrace the research. I mean, we all know folks 20 years ago or so, right, that were invited to Microsoft, that work with Microsoft, and Microsoft's like, look, tell us what you know, like help us get better. I think they were always on that embracement of researchers. I mean, certainly not 100% across all of Microsoft's history, but in the past 20 years, certainly, I think they've really created a great program that works well with researchers. and it's just amazing how it's a sharp contrast to how Apple is treating researchers today, and really hasn't gotten that much better in the way, researchers are like, still, it's a pain in the ass to work with Apple, and we get no recognition, and they change the rules as we go, and all those complaints. And just to see this today really kind of underscored the difference in the two companies.
The interesting one that I picked up, the post that you had links to basically the last year of the quarterly security research leaderboards. And there are a lot of familiar names. Well, there are a lot of names that have repeating over the top 10 to 12.
Yeah, stating that it's nice to work with Microsoft. Yeah. Right? Like, I'm still going to report bugs to Microsoft because they're nice to work with.
Hey, this person was first this quarter, and now they're 7th, and then they're 3rd, and then
still reporting bugs.
Yep, over a year. So yeah, that's pretty neat. No, Paul, I think you had one other story that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, there is one more story.
Yeah, we need to talk about a squirrel story of the week, of course.
I think it was a hippo, not a squirrel.
It was definitely a hippo story. So the headline that got me was Pablo Escobar's cocaine hippos are legally people, and that's just part of the story. That is just so. When they finally got and eventually killed Pablo Escobar. Those of you that know the story, and there's amazing documentaries and movies about Pablo Escobar. But once they had gotten him, he amassed this amazing fortune. I mean, he had money buried all over them. I mean, just the amount of wealth that Pablo Escobar accumulated is significant. And one of the things he spent his money on is creating this entire zoo. Like, there was all kinds of animals that they had. What I thought was kind of weird in the article is that once they had basically killed Pablo Escobar and seized his assets, they took the animals and moved most of them to zoos in the United States, except the hippos.
Yep, which escaped to the river right outside of his mansion.
But they said in the article they left like 4 hippos, obviously of different genders, because the article states, what did they say? They get like
all was well.
All was well until the hippos started fucking, is what they say right in the Gizmodo article. Like, they don't mince words about it whatsoever. Like, so the hippos were getting down and dirty, and now they're up to 120 hippos.
Doing what comes naturally.
Right? I mean, it's nature. So 120 hippos roaming around Colombia. They're one of the top invasive species of the world. And so authorities were weighing a plan to kill off all the hippos. However, there's legislation that was like, we shouldn't just go out and kill the hippos. We should, which is unfortunate that it has ties to like Alan. I couldn't help but think of Alan Turing. Like, well, we're going to chemically castrate the hippos. And then they're like, well, that's not humane, either. And so they filed a lawsuit to basically save them from being euthanized and killed. And so the lawsuit that stemmed from Colombia was like, all right, let's not kill them. Let's just sterilize the hippos so they don't continue to grow.
Yep.
And then like the story just has so many twists.
It just
and
keeps
turns.
going on and on.
On and on. So then there was a contraceptive developed by the U.S. Agricultural Department to sterilize the main group. And then somehow there was a group in the U.S. that applied for the hippos' rights to compel their testimony in order to support Colombian litigation. And now the U.S. District Court of Ohio granted an application recognizing the hippos are interested persons, which means like hippos are legally people, according to that legislation. And so it may seem like an incremental step, but the implications in this decision could be huge. They recognize that animals are legal people. It's just it's weird how the international laws like intertwine. There was something about experts from the U.S. could testify in Colombia, but they're obviously two totally separate.
And the U.S. Department of Agriculture was funded to develop a contraceptive or a sterilization technique for Colombian hippos. Like,
so weird.
Hippos aren't a problem here in the U.S., are they? Like, so why is this our problem? I don't know.
They're following a similar migration path to the Brazilian killer bees from the 70s.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, they said that. I mean, if left unregulated, they said that they basically the population would keep increasing and growing, and they're posing problems. So
Sure.
they're eating massive amounts of foliage, disrupting the ecosystem. The voluminous poop is altering local waterway chemistry and oxygen levels. They've also been straight up attacking people, chasing them around and seriously injuring one man.
They're territorial,
2020, right? Oh, so
This is a serious problem right here.
they said that if left, to just procreate, they could be more than 1,400 hippos roaming the country by the end of the next decade. That's a lot of hippo poop.
4 to 120. Have you ever seen the videos of a hippo pooping underwater?
No.
Phew. Oh, man.
Now we've got some Google searching to do. Thanks for that, Larry.
Save for that when you're at home with the kids, because, man.
Oh, God. And here we just thought that there were these cute animals at the zoo that would go.
Yep.
Does the
walk.
name Marlon Perkins mean anything to you?
Yes.
The more you know. Da-da-da-da.
Just crazy article. Had to put it in there.
Yep. And then we got talking about hippo poop.
And then it all culminates in hippo poop. And with that,
Thus reinforcing my statement, we're stuck in the anal phase.
That's right. Thanks, everyone, for listening and watching this edition of Paul's Security Weekly. Larry, take us out.
Over and hippo poop.